Antiquities, dear colleagues and guests, good afternoon and thank you for joining the workshop on Heritage at Risk and Digital Responses, a Cyprus-French collaboration perspective co-organized by the Cyprus Institute and the Institut Français de Chypre. Climate change risks, resilience strategies, conservation and preservation, society engagement and illicit trafficking are at the core of challenges cultural heritage is facing in Cyprus and the region. Over the past 15 years, STAR sees digital cultural heritage expertise at the Cyprus Institute, in close collaboration with the Department of Antiquities, and through extensive cooperation with various French research institutions, develops integrated tools and methods to answer these challenges with a holistic, multidisciplinary, and cross-sectorial approach. Strategic investment in developing frontier research in digital cultural heritage secured the membership of the Cyprus Institute in key EU-funded research infrastructures, such as ECHOS, IRIS, and DARIA, and enhance its research capacity through numerous competitive funding research and innovation projects. The main goal of this event is to present recent advancements in tackling the challenges facing the broader topic of heritage at risk in Cyprus, and discuss joint ways and strategies of moving forward. And we will conclude this event with the exchange of ideas and discussions around a light refreshment offered by the Institut Français and the Cyprus Institute. So I would like now to invite Professor Stavros Malas, President of the Cyprus Institute, to address welcoming words.
Thank you, Sorin. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Special welcome to the ambassador, of course, the representative of the Institute of France. We also have here the national representative, the National Commission of UNESCO, Mrs. Ironemidou, and of course, the representative of the Department of Antiquities. Now, as you all know, the Cyprus Institute is very active in building synergies with a number of stakeholders in preserving our cultural heritage, using technology, using all sorts of sciences. I think archaeology, or rather cultural heritage, better these days, is a confederation of a lot of disciplines. Probably one of the most highly engaged discipline in research in terms of bringing together lots of technologies. Now, when I was reading the title, Risks for Cultural Heritage, we tend to think of natural risks, but there is one major risk which we ought to recognize. So we need to think 200 years ahead what historians will say about this period. We are actually our generation is experiencing the most fast transformation of culture in the history of humankind. And one will consider it as a race, the relay race. You know, you go around and you hand over the gauntlet to the next athlete and so on. Our generation, I think, is going to be another generation that is going to miss the gauntlet and it's going to run faster. So the link with the past is most likely to be lost, particularly in intangible heritage. I tend to emphasize this. So we live in an era of massive transformation, cultural transformation, changes in civilization which have no bearing, no relevance to the past, at least for some societies. And this is something that we ought to be thinking about. Preservation of something that is tangible will happen, whether it's now or, of course, later on, it will happen. Preservation of intangible cultural heritage, I think it's something that we ought to be alarmed, and I am very sensitive to that. So, and the Cyprus Institute will do with all stakeholders its part to do that. Now, we are, as you know, the last couple of days we've been talking about an event that is organized by Europa Nostra. Now, Europa Nostra has generated a node in Cyprus, and we are part of it, along with the University of Cyprus and the Leventis Foundation, of course, the municipality of Nicosia. And the idea there, of course, is to promote a number of events, some of them bi-communal also, and I want to emphasize that, and we are working towards that also with UNDP. in preserving our cultural heritage of the past, particularly in the north part of the island. So we are active. We are obviously very happy that every time we have an event here with the French embassy, 95% of the time is about culture. And we want to thank you. We have a long history with French archaeologists, along with some Swedish and British in this country, and we want to thank you for that. And of course, last but not least, our institute has a very strong French connection. Thank you, Menu. Michel.
Thank you, Professor Manas. Your Excellency, Clelia Chevrier-Kolachko, French Ambassador to Cyprus, I would like to invite you also to address the audience.
Dear President of the Cyprus Institute, dear Director of the Department of Antiquities, the Embassy of France, the French Institute, and the Cyprus Institute are closest partners, thanks to numerous institutional, academic, professional, but also personal ties over the years. And it is very encouraging to see that this partnership keeps growing and diversifying over the years. I would like to acknowledge the quality of projects led together with Stark Laboratory in the field of heritage and archaeology, where France is a major actor, particularly when it comes to the bilateral relation between Cyprus and France. Today's workshop on heritage risk and digital responses is one more example of our common will to cooperate on projects of public interest. And I am glad that today we'll have a focus on France's best practices, thanks to the presence of representatives of CNRS MAP, who have worked on Notre Dame restoration, and of Actavista Association about heritage and social inclusion. They have come to participate in the opening of Europa Nostra Regional Hub in Cyprus, which is an excellent news for Cyprus. I am also glad that an important French presence will be ensured. So I wish you all a very interesting workshop.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Dr. Stathis Rapto on behalf of the Director of Antiquities to address welcoming words.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the welcome address of the Director of the Department of Antiquities. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the workshop organized today by the Cyprus Institute in collaboration with our partners of the Institut Français in Cyprus, focusing on heritage at risk and digital responses. Our workshop today brings together researchers and experts working on the preservation, the protection of the cultural heritage, which faces multiple challenges in the modern world, arising from the climate change, building activity, deterioration resulting over time, and others. Today's gathering highlights the cooperation between Cyprus and France in the protection and preservation of cultural heritage and the role of digital technologies in this field. Our cultural ties have raised important collaborations, permitting the exchange of knowledge and expertise in the heritage preservation. Through a number of research initiatives, we continue to explore advanced solutions to protect our past. It is perhaps needless within the scope of this workshop to underline once more the role of the Department of Antiquities as the governmental authority in charge of the management, research, protection, preservation, and promotion of the island's cultural heritage. Specifically, we are currently controlling and managing over 1,600 inscribed ancient monuments as per the Antiquities Law. Given our targeted objective to safeguard heritage, the results of these collaborations enable us to benefit from the new technologies in order to provide the basis to enhance protection. The cooperation between the Department of Antiquities, the Cyprus Institute, and our French partners, it's a good example of what can be achieved with joint efforts for the protection of our cultural heritage. The output of this collaboration enables us to develop approaches, research methodologies, establish preventive measures and assessments, and create solutions that protect cultural heritage from the consequences of growing risks. I extend my sincere gratitude to all participants, and I wish you a very productive workshop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rapto. We can start now with the presentation, and I would like to invite Dr. Marina Solomidou Hieronimidou, President of the UNESCO Cyprus National Committee and former Director of Antiquities, to present her contribution. And we have to present, right?
Yes, indeed.
So. This one, right? Yes. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. So you are used to see me usually under my hat as director of the Department of Antiquities. I have retired a year ago, and now I have another hat, that of the president of the Cyprus Commission for UNESCO. Madame l'Ambassadrice, Mr. Malas, dear Michel, dear colleagues, dear friends, I will talk about UNESCO today. So what is UNESCO? UNESCO is a specialized agency of the United Nations. To be honest, it is the successor of the League of Nations International Committee on Intellectual Cooperation. It is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. It was established on November 16, 1945, just after the World War II. It has its headquarters in Paris, the city in the center of Paris. It has 194 member states and 12 associate members. Its mission? To build peace through international cooperation on key mission sectors. What are these key sectors of UNESCO? It's education, sciences, and we talk about natural sciences, social and human sciences, culture, communication, and information. UNESCO's agenda on cultural heritage protection. It has three main fields, if I may say so. The first one is the international conventions and legal frameworks, the programs and initiatives, partnerships and capacity building, and then the third one, digital and technological innovations. And if we start with the international conventions and legal frameworks, we have first the 1954 Hague Convention and its two protocols of 1954 and 1999. We're talking about protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict. It has preventive measures, and its second protocol of the 1999 strengthens the enforcement mechanisms and imposes stricter penalties for heritage destruction. Cyprus ratified the Hague Convention and its first protocol in 1971, and the second protocol in 2001. Then we have the 1970 Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import, export, and transfer of ownership of cultural property. We're talking about the prohibition of illegal trade, encouragement for stronger laws, adoption, and it is adopted by many nations. Cyprus ratified this convention in 1979. Then we have the 1972 World Heritage Convention, well known to us. It identifies and preserves sites of outstanding cultural and natural value. There is the nomination process that we all know. The countries nominate sites for inclusion on this very well-known World Heritage List. And then we have also the World Heritage in Danger List. Then we have the 2001 Underwater Cultural Heritage Convention, which of course protects all underwater archaeological sites, and it encourages scientific exploration. Cyprus did not ratify this convention since it integrated, we integrated in the antiquities law very strict provisions and regulations. After that, we have the 2003 Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention, which is complementing material culture protection, preserves cultural identity, and then we turn to programs and initiatives, partnerships, and capacity building. We start with the World Heritage Center, very well-known center to us. It was established in 1992 as UNESCO's main body for World Heritage. It is responsible for implementing the World Heritage Convention. It has the site nominations and monitoring, conservation efforts, international assistance, and then it provides training and awareness raising. We have the Heritage Emergency Fund, which is a rapid funding for cultural heritage protection during emergency preparedness, the support for training, and then I have here to show you some examples of fund utilization in 2018, post-earthquake heritage protection in Nepal, and then the emergency safeguarding of Syrian cultural sites between 2016 and 2019. Unite for Heritage campaign. This was launched in 2015 as a part of UNESCO's heritage protection efforts. The target audience are youth, professionals, and policymakers. And the methods of engagement, it's the use of digital tools and social media for raising awareness. Revive the Spirit of Mosul initiative. This was launched again in 2015 with a focus on post-conflict reconstruction, and it's the rebuilding of Mosul, Iraq after conflict, and the restoration of various landmarks and cultural sites such as Al-Nuri Mosque and Al-Saas Church. The Memory of the World program, which has to do with the protection of documentary heritage, particularly in areas which are affected by conflict or natural disaster. And these include manuscripts, ancient texts, and historical archives. UNESCO has relations with 323 international NGOs, of which the most important ones in this culture sector are ICOMOS, ICOM, IUCN, which is for nature, and ICRO. ICOMOS is the International Council on Monuments and Sites. I will not insist on that. ICROM is the International Center for the Study of the Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property. And then we move to digital and technological innovations. We have the 3D documentation and digital heritage initiatives, advanced 3D scanning. It creates digital replicas of heritage sites, virtual reconstruction, and as an example, I've put the Bamiyan Buddhas that were digitally recreated after destruction in 2001. Remote sensing and GIS mapping, monitoring and assessing threats. This uses satellite imagery and GIS technology, and it identifies potential risks to heritage sites. And then we turn to AI, artificial intelligence in heritage protection, AI tools in heritage protection that analyze satellite images, detect looting and illegal construction, identity climate-induced damage, and we have the artificial intelligence-driven databases. We have also the digital archives and virtual museums. It's an online access to digitized cultural artifacts. And as another example, Google Arts and Culture, the creation of virtual tours that we all know of heritage sites, for example, that you see some of these here. I have a slight technical problem here. I want to move to the next slide, but it refuses. Okay.
Just a second.
Okay, thanks a lot. And then I turn to UNESCO, the UNESCO National Commissions, their role and missions. First, it's the bridging global and national efforts, strengthening national and regional cooperation. Second, the policy influence and advisory role that it has. Third, coordination and implementation of UNESCO programs. Fourth, the management of national inventories, prizes, and awards. 5, capacity building and awareness. And 6, supporting international collaboration. And now a few words for the Cyprus National Commission for UNESCO. Our commission advances national and regional cooperation in cultural heritage protection. It maintains direct communication with UNESCO headquarters in close collaboration with our permanent delegation in UNESCO, and participates in UNESCO international meetings on cultural heritage and related global policies. I want here to mention something pretty new, that we have received an email concerning the first international forum of the UNESCO Civil-Military Alliance for the protection of cultural property, and this will take place in May, on the 16th of May this year at the headquarters of UNESCO in Paris. And I'm very much looking forward to it. It maintains close collaboration ties with governmental bodies responsible for cultural and natural heritage. For example, we have close collaboration with the Deputy Ministry, of course, of Culture, the Ministry of Education, Sport and Youth, the Ministry of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, and now we will have another close collaboration with the Commissioner of the Environment concerning biospheres. It acts as a two-way communication channel, relaying local insights and challenges back to UNESCO headquarters, while also disseminating information about international priorities, programs, and initiatives to local government bodies and communities. It offers expert advice to governmental bodies on developing and implementing policies that safeguard cultural heritage, aligning with international conventions like the 1972 World Heritage Convention and the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. It contributes to the implementation of UNESCO programs related to cultural heritage. We have the World Heritage Program, for which the focal point is the Department of Antiquities of Cyprus, and then 2 related UNESCO chairs. We have the Chair for Digital Cultural Heritage at the Cyprus University of Technology, and the UNESCO Chair for Human Development, Security, and the Fight Against Transnational Crime and Illicit Trafficking in Cultural Property, which is established at the Neapolis University in Paphos. It establishes collaborations with academic research centers, NGOs, other stakeholders, and the civil society on matters of cultural and natural heritage. It promotes community engagement and awareness. It raises public awareness of the importance of cultural heritage and fosters community involvement in safeguarding efforts. Such efforts especially target youth, but also addresses all other population groups to ensure heritage preservation is inclusive and sustainable. By engaging governmental authorities, local communities, educational and academic institutions, and cultural organizations, national commissions help foster a sense of ownership and active participation in UNESCO-led initiatives. This grassroots involvement is crucial for the sustainable implementation of policies and for building resilience within local cultural and educational frameworks. And I thank you for your patience.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Solomido Ironimido. And now, I would like to invite my friend and colleague, Professor Nicholas Bakizis, to present a joint contribution with Dr. Anthi Caldelli of the Department of Antiquities on the impacts of climate change to cultural heritage. And unfortunately, Anthi is not with us today, but she's here with the intellectual mind, in spirit. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, sorry. Okay, again, Anthi asked me, I mean, I was hoping maybe, you know, she would be able to join us today, but unfortunately some health issues are preventing her, so she's sending apologies, and I will try to do the best I can to present also the material that she's responsible for, and we've been working for several years together with Anthi, but especially between the Department of Antiquities and the Cyprus Institute on issues that are related to the impacts of climate change on cultural heritage. And the collaboration, of course, started, I want to go back, this is 2019. I need to refer to the Cyprus government initiative for collaboration, regional collaboration on climate change, which effectively put together a series of thematic focused task groups, task forces from the region, the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East. And among them, one of these task forces was focused on cultural heritage. And this is where we collaborated with Anthi and, of course, with Dr. Ieronimidou, then the director of the department, and we continue now with Dr. Georgiou's support as director of the Department of Antiquities. So this task force was driven by primarily three key questions, which we are still pursuing, regarding the direct and indirect impact of climate change on the region's cultural heritage, exactly how the impact on heritage affects social and economic life, and also what will be the role of cultural heritage in our region as we transition under climate change conditions. And the proposed strategy that the task force came together to suggest was that it's important to consider, of course, how fragmented the region is politically. This is, I don't think I need to expand on that, but that is a very important region for global cultural heritage. It is a hub of major civilizations of the past. So at the same time, one solution is to harvest local knowledge and expertise at the country level while providing a regional framework of collaboration. And at the same time, a critical factor was identified as our ability to respond to the challenge at both the local and the regional levels, with a focus on the region's societies and local communities. And the priority areas that were identified as having regional significance were areas, how important it is to map, to consider the risk, to monitor cultural and natural heritage, that these are preconditions necessary for mitigation and adaptation plans, how it's important to downscale the research and the focus, and of course the use of advanced science and technology are a priority, to integrate cultural heritage and its management in Greek economy planning in order to convince also governments to invest in this, and how cultural heritage education, community engagement, and public awareness are very important, because it's a big opportunity for the region, as the cultural wealth of our shared past must be kind of a driver, a beacon for collective action and mobilization. So one major initiative that was primarily led by the EU, and this is a very important high-level kind of monitoring group that was put together with the participation also of Cyprus, and ANTHI was participating in this, was this group that worked between 2019 and 2022, worked on existing agreements and preliminary frameworks and policies for the protection of cultural heritage. And what is important as the result of this working group, and it's been important for Cyprus, is that it identified a series of important gaps in the current state of combating the impacts of climate change on cultural heritage. So there has been like a lack of awareness, a limited inclusion of cultural heritage in national strategies concerning the impacts of the climate crisis. This is not a European level, but it very much concerns Cyprus as well. There is a lack of motivations, let's say tax reduction to put cultural heritage in line with national and EU policies, a lack of collaboration between the various agencies on national level and at all member states. Again, lack of collaboration between specialists on cultural heritage and climate change, respectively. Society in general is not really included in any measures that are taken. There is a lack of quantified data. We will be hearing a lot about the importance of integrated data later. There is also a lack of data showing specifically how monuments and historical buildings can contribute in the reduction of carbon dioxide. And there is also limited data on the economic dimension of all these efforts. And again, also they identified that in general, at the level of the web, at the internet, there is limited information on the current state of cultural heritage as a result of the climate change impacts. We hear a lot, but we don't have specifics. UNESCO, and we heard from Dr. Ionimidou, has put out a very important policy document in 2023 that has been guiding very much international collaboration. You know and you are aware that, of course, the COP meetings have been trying to address the issue, but I have to say that the last COP meeting last year, COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, the results regarding cultural heritage were kind of disappointing, very limited. Budgetary needs were not really considered. So although climate emergency was declared a cultural emergency, and they spoke about the impact of climate change on communities, livelihoods, and culture globally. Again, identifying culture being a catalyst and everything, there were limited results. And we hope for the next COP meeting that there will be a more strong action plan, but I'm not holding my breath personally on this. So the most important thing is that UNESCO was declared as the lead knowledge partner and provider, which is something very important. And I think we can rely on that, and I'm very happy that this is something that we can do together with the Cyprus Commission on UNESCO. Of course, you heard about ICCROM. ICCROM has been very active. Again, Cyprus and the Department of Antiquities is participating in ICCROM. ICCROM has been putting out all kinds of initiatives and programs, giving opportunities for organizations to actually get training. Cyprus has been benefiting, and institutions in Cyprus, by big initiatives like the Copernicus for Cultural Heritage monitoring and data collection system. A lot of monitoring systems are relying on frameworks like this. This is one of several. And regarding, we wanted to also share with you some Cyprus updates and developments. There has been a revised national strategy for climate change, which now is including cultural heritage, which is a big step. It didn't before. This is recent. So in this revised strategy, the Department of Antiquities, and we're very happy, and I want to congratulate this role that the Department of Antiquities has assumed key responsibilities in this framework, and this is good news, in my opinion, and in our opinion, this is very important. From our side at the Cyprus Institute, we continue to lead as an institute the scientific part of the Cyprus Initiative on Climate Change in the EME region. It was recently renewed by the President of the Republic, and the Cyprus Institute was renewed in this role. This happened last September in the major international conference we organized in Larnaca under the title Climate Crisis in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East. So we've been identifying in this framework key threats to cultural heritage by climate change in Cyprus. I'm not going to go through the list. I think you can understand which are the most important ones. I would say that in general, the rising temperatures and fire dangers have risen, as well as coastal erosion. And there are parts of Cyprus that are very susceptible, very kind of sensitive to this coastal erosion, especially alongside the southern coast of Cyprus. So the Department of Antiquities has been leading the way by producing and preparing key management plans and management studies, beginning with UNESCO World Heritage sites, of course, but this is something that is developing for the entirety of the monumental heritage and the cultural heritage and archaeological heritage of Cyprus. And this is where we as an institution find ways to collaborate and support this work of the Department of Antiquities. For example, I'm just showing you two slides here, and actually the lower one is the ways we've been helping in the mapping and the study of the materiality of wall paintings in the UNESCO churches of Cyprus, and this was done in collaboration with the C2RMF in France, with our director, Michel Menou, having a key role here. And also above, you see that we've been studying also the wooden heritage of these monuments. The Department of Antiquities have been also having collaboration with, for example, in Kato Paphos, the condition reports and recordings of the conditions at the mosaics in Cyprus in collaboration with both the Getty Conservation Institute as well as Carleton University. I'm just pointing to two examples. Fire hazards, of course, as I mentioned, is a major priority for especially the monuments that are situated in the forested slopes of the Troodos mountain. Our colleagues, and here Athos Agapiou from the Cyprus Institute of Technology, have been working with the department and using Copernicus and satellite images to identify and map the danger in specific sites. And I will not continue with a series of other initiatives, but I wanted to just give you a sense of where collaborative efforts are going. And I just wanted to leave you with some next steps that are identified that concern that in general, a collaborative, concrete and holistic approach on the way we study, monitor, but at the same time help monuments to transition into, into this climate change era is important. We need a well-defined time frame with actions, qualitative analysis on risks, and also the need to preserve the authenticity and integrity of cultural and natural heritage, because this is very important for social cohesion. Adaptation frameworks related to climate are important. And also we need to have values-based approaches and awareness raising that will lead to societies being much more engaged through participatory approaches. And we will hear more from colleagues in the next presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. So for the next presentation, I will join with my friend and colleague George Artopoulos, Associate Professor at StarC, in providing some brief overviews of the StarC research activities in digital approaches to heritage at risk. So I will start. So I would like to start by mentioning that the work that I will present here, is the accumulated effort of many, many people. Some of them are listed here, and I'm sorry if I missed some names. Each one of them contributed from their own perspective, from their own discipline. I think one of the strengths of our group is this approach of multidisciplinary work. Also of people coming from very different countries with different cultures, which adds another dimension on our work together. So the challenges that we are dealing with them every day, but also in the long term, are not only to align how we think about heritage and our work, but also how our own cultures from different countries brings in new ideas and new ways to look at heritage. We are also benefiting from the collaboration with the Cyprus Department of Antiquities, the Cyprus Police, the Church of Cyprus, UNDP, UNESCO. And we have extensive scientific cooperation with archaeological schools in Athens, among them the French school, the British school, and the Belgian schools. And I brought also here, I would like to mention also the permissions from the Hellenic Ministry of Culture for a project that I will present. So when we talk about digital challenges and cultural heritage, what we would like to achieve in the long term is a paradigm shift, to move from a competitive science to a collaborative science, which is data-driven, cross-disciplinary as much as possible, and in a collaborative way, integrating humanities and social sciences with mathematics, engineering, computer sciences, and natural sciences. And we're focusing primarily on the aspects that you see here of fusion of data, so all kinds of data, information, knowledge that comes from different disciplines, and we would like to bring them together, because as you have heard already so many times, cultural heritage actually is a very broad umbrella that can accommodate many, many different domains. We also would like to develop systems that are understandable by both humans and machines, so in which language we talk to each other and in which way each one is benefiting from this symbiosis, let's say. Computers are dumb machines. Garbage in, garbage out, it's something that I learned, I think, first lecture in computer sciences. But clearly they have some advantages and we can benefit from them if we think about them as cognitive technologies, as cognitive collaborators, and not only as something that we just type in data. We would like also to have a clear way to describe how we reason about heritage, how we make inferences, and how we build argumentation processes. And these have to be clearly and transparently described if we want to achieve the paradigm shift mentioned before. So primarily we can group our work in two main domains: data, and this relates of Internet of Things and relates to AI. It's a very big word today. The open science umbrella, of course, has to deal with the data. And the other part is, okay, we gather all this data, then how do we address it? How do we interact with it? What are the visualization environments that help us building together with the data the desired digital ecosystem? Coming now to risks, Nicholas also mentioned, and also others before, there are many, many different agents. And here we group them under one big umbrella of anthropogenic agents. And then we have to think that some of them are intended, some of them are not intended. And I listed them here. I will not go one by one. In the same way, we also have natural agents. And also here we are talking primarily of two main groups. One are cumulative processes over time, which can be accelerated by, and they are accelerated by climate change as one major trigger, but not only. But there are also disasters, and we have to deal with that as well. So one of the big challenges when we think about how to manage these risks and how to offer sustainable solutions to reduce risk are to understand the nature of these agents, what are they, how they act, what is their potential impact on the heritage itself, and what is the risk level of specific agent or in synergy with other agents as well, because it's usually not only one agent acts. On the same time, in order to assess how agents work, we need to understand which kind of heritage we are dealing with. What is the identity of this heritage in its tangible and intangible components? What is the conservation state of the heritage asset? And what is the both natural and anthropogenic ecosystem where the heritage asset is located? For that, we are building workflows, and I brought here some logos of large-scale European projects that we are collaborating in, and each one of them has a specific agenda, let's say. IRIS is the European Research Infrastructure on Heritage Science, and there we are thinking a lot on how to document heritage from an art historical perspective, chemical perspective, digital, geometry, shape, materiality, you name it. A more recent project that started a few months ago, Atrium, works on the concept of building formal workflows, and we are both partners there. And there, the main idea is that in order to be able to communicate results, to communicate research, we need to know how we are working. What are the processes of our work, step by step? In which language we are talking, language meaning computer language. And then the most recent very big initiative called ECHOS. This is a project launched by the DG Research and Innovation. And it aims, it has a very big challenge, a very big ambitious aim to create a collaborative cloud for cultural heritage. And this is also the coordination is in France. It is also very much aligned with I don't know if you are aware of a very important event that happened in Paris last week, I think, about AI, so data. And in this project, we work on building digital ecosystems. So knowledge graphs, how we represent our knowledge, how we visualize our knowledge, and how, and this is extremely important, how we can convince researchers to open up their data. So I would give some brief examples of heritage at risk and digital approaches. And the first one is on how we deal with illicit trafficking of cultural goods. When we look at the world of combating illicit trafficking, we have different agents that work together, independently, in collaborations, which are from law enforcement, heritage custodians, art market dealers, heritage practitioners, which perform all kinds of activities, for example, for the detection, prevention, legal investigations, and so forth. But in order for them to work together, they need a common language. And as much as possible, a unified digital ecosystem. And in this project, we are also benefiting from competitive funding research from the European Commission. The project Anquis is led by the French School in Athens. And the research itself focuses on three axes: the prevention of illicit trafficking, the stoppage of it, and the discovery of already looted artifacts. So one of the main problems in this world of illicit trafficking is that we have all kinds of initiatives, and I brought some of them here, which describe databases. One of the most famous ones is of the Comando Carabinieri per la tutela del patrimonio culturale. In Italy, they have a very extensive database of many, many objects. There is also others of Interpol and UNDC. But as you see on the right-hand side, these descriptions are quite poor. Usually they are very limited in the information that can be obtained from these objects. And also the way data is reported is very different, because in some databases you see an image with some text, but in others, for example, the Italian examples, publishes newsletters on the looted objects. So it's not only, there is a very big difference in each database how objects are described, what's the information that is available, and usually the information is quite limited to very, you see here an example of how an object is described. But when we look at objects themselves, when we bring in the research component, we see that we have actually a lot of information about these objects. And we can have quite a lot if we are able to convince people to bring together their knowledge and share it together. And the sharing has to be done, of course, in a way that answers challenges of semantics, ontologies, and so forth. So our task in this project, and this is what we were doing, is to build what we call the Guardian CH, a global unified archive for reducing and deterring illicit activities and nurturing cultural heritage, where we are addressing exactly these aspects of bringing in all the knowledge that is available on an asset, being able to trace objects. We emphasize a lot the need of having provenance of the object very clearly stated, the history of ownership with the related documentation of these assets. The system that was developed here covers a very broad range of objects that are described. There are all kinds of tools and buttons that you can click, for example, to trace spatial and temporal movements of objects. The description comes also with the qualitative indicators of the risks related to illegal activities. Of course, you can personalize access to the database. It is based on common thesaurian gazetteers, but also very importantly, it can converge existing descriptions in the various databases and bring them together in a unified way. The other example that I thought to bring here is the protection of heritage from climate change impacts. And as an example, we have also here in the crowd a representative that knows very well this place. We are working on the UNESCO site of Agios Ioannis Lampadistis Monastery. It has a very long history. There was a lot of building and a lot of changes in the architecture, which often was not documented. And this is why the starting point of dealing with climate change and cultural heritage is to create a system that is dynamic, multidimensional, and starts with the documentation of all the components of the monuments. And here are some examples of how the information gathered is put in together. The geometries are documented at the desired levels of accuracy, and an environment for collaboration based on located on the web is set. So this is a kind of a pipeline, let's say, that we are adopting here. We are also looking on how to visualize all this data, and these are some examples in the lower left part. There are two ways of interacting digitally with the model, one through an ontology based on function, So I want to see different spaces that have specific functions, or I can look at the same structure through shapes. So I'm looking at definitions of a column, for example, or a roof, and so forth. Then we are exploring various ways to present the data online and have collaborative environments online. And here are some two examples of this kind of collaborative and interactive environments. By the way, this project is part of a PhD of a student in our group. So you can see also the level of work that we are conducting. The other aspect is the integration of data that we have, and the data that we have is presented in its correct, let's say, spatial location. So here you see, for example, analysis of a fresco using, by the way, a device that you have seen before, which was developed in collaboration with the CITO-RMF in France, and also it's the result of a joint PhD with a French student. On the lower part is an example of how we locate dendrochronology analysis with the associated data. So this is a way where we can visualize scientifically all the data that we collected from this site in order to be able to take decisions that are based on a very broad range of data sources. The last example that I would like to show is how we are using 3D documentation for virtual restoration and mapping of conservation states of objects. And yeah, it's working. And we had the privilege to work on a unique object from Crete. The object you will see soon was found almost 40 years ago now, 35 years ago, in a site in southeastern Crete, a Minoan site. And let me just move it a bit further. So these are videos from the excavation. Of course, that usually happens in archaeological excavation. The nicest finds, you find them in the last day when you are cleaning to close. Archaeologists saw some very weird objects with a very weird reflection to light, and they realized that it's something quite important. So they started to collect them, and they were in a very, very bad condition, very fragmented, very small. Nevertheless, they understood that they have something unique, and they worked quite heavily, as you see here, and with a lot of care to collect as much as possible from of these objects. So, moving a bit forward, this is what came out of putting together all these fragments in more than 10 years of conservation. So conservators worked very hard, and finally they managed to restore. This is an ivory statue. It's an ivory figurine around 60 centimeters tall, made of hippopotamus tusks with very specific stone as the head, with crystal eyes. It was covered with gold, and overall it's a very, very unique object. We were called in 4 years ago, I think, 3-4 years ago, because we wanted to try and fit together some remaining objects, that remaining fragments that could not be fit. So we 3D scanned every fragment, and we started working on the geometry. And you see here on the site itself, Well, I would open a parenthesis because we are here. The site itself is located on a valley. On top of the hill of this valley, there is a sanctuary where several terracotta figurines of the same shape, more or less, were found. So probably we're dealing here with a deity that few hundred years after becomes Zeus of Crete. So the object, you saw how it was found. It was smashed and destroyed and burned deliberately. Somebody got very angry on it. And this is why also the process of restoration was very difficult. I wanted to show you here some example of while we were working, and this is why I wanted to bring this example as why it's so important to document in 3D and why it's so important to document with a high accuracy in 3D. We immediately found some matchings that conservators could not find. Also because they were looking at these objects from totally different perspectives. So, following our work, we were able to reconstruct the left hand that you see there, the whole way of the mechanism connecting the upper part with the lower part. We corrected the posture of the statue, and we could virtually restore also the right foot. So the outcomes were that we were able to reposition all the 17, and these are very, very small fragments, and Rahav did an amazing work in putting back these pieces. We were able to correct, as you see there, the posture. So we are talking here about how objects are presented in a museum. We have now a much better understanding on how this object was assembled and manufactured, because we could show that also ivory pegs were used. And having the 3D and having an analysis on its shapes and surface topology, we were able to map all the damages and all the cracks and different types of damages that were on the surface. And this is also a way of virtually and digitally preserving the state of this object today. So I will stop here, and I would like, yeah, okay. I would like to invite George to continue. S'il vous plaît, monsieur.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Sorin. Hi, everyone. I would also like to thank you for joining us today. In the interest of time, I'm not going to expand or further develop the whole theoretical framework within which we are conducting our research here. So I will focus only on sharing with you, building on what Sorin has just presented, to share with you some knowledge and lessons we learned through our research. And of course, everything that I will be presenting also is results of research projects, interdisciplinary research projects where many people have been contributing. Hence, I will be including like some publications. If you're interested, you can just go and learn more about these projects and this work. The only thing I wanted to add to what it has been already told is that in addition and extent to all the initiatives that we are responding to, the European and international initiatives that we are responding to about cultural heritage, we are also partners of the new European Bauhaus Stewardship Lab, in the context of which we are contributing new tools workflows and new knowledge that supports policy recommendations in order to trigger tangible transformation on site. And we pursue this mission by acknowledging, by recognizing the key role of cultural heritage in shaping more sustainable and reflective and cohesive societies through activities that help us better grow our understanding about and respect of what is called the terminology that is used in the context of the new European Bauhaus, a spirit of a place. So place-based activities are very important because through this interaction with place we can have access to all the cultural identities we are interested in capturing and maintaining or bringing together and learning from when we want to preserve in a holistic way our examples of cultural heritage. So moving on directly to a couple of research activities that built on what it was already presented. I will start with this one, which focused on developing a more holistic approach to cultural heritage rehabilitation and reuse basically today. So this again aligns completely with this additional aspect of cultural heritage, which contributes significantly to the discussion about us achieving the new Green Deal goals. And this has to do with reusing our existing building stock. This is key if we want to achieve these goals. So I want to, in this project that I will be sharing with you, move beyond the key, very important monuments that we aim to capture in order to preserve all the knowledge about them, to expand to listed buildings and other heritage that is in volume much larger than the very few important monuments around us. So in this context, we of course need to understand all the variables and the challenges of reusing existing heritage buildings. And part of this challenge is, as I'm sure you all know, financing the renovation and the rehabilitation of the building. So this was also was the last step in the whole workflow of our process. So moving beyond the documentation, data analysis, and data management about the conservation of the building to see how by developing new methodologies we could facilitate and we could contribute towards also the financial aspect of the renovation. And in this project that was funded by the NECBC-MED framework, we studied different examples of public buildings, so heritage listed buildings of public function from around the Mediterranean that were of different, as you can see on the screen, like architectural typology from different period and therefore different architectural style, as well as buildings under different condition in ruin. Some of them were in ruin state, some others were actually occupied and used. So in the case of Cyprus, we had as a pilot the Club of the British Cavalry, which is, for those of you who don't know it, a building, a very interesting in terms of its style, building that is more or less in the buffer zone. It's located opposite the Lydra Palace. And of course, the process started by studying its history and trying to bring together all kinds of archival material we could find about this building. It included conservation data analysis regarding stone deterioration and crack pattern analysis. And then we moved on to the environmental and energy analysis of the building and its specific architectural parts in 2 steps, or in 2 ways, or from 2 points of view: indoor environmental monitoring and outdoor environmental monitoring, collecting data for a significant amount of time. We even, with the help of our collaborators who were back then working for the municipality of Nicosia, yes, Agni, I'm talking about you, and of course colleagues in the UN, we were allowed to install our weather stations on top of the Lydra Palace for a significant amount of time. And of course, we moved on to what is typically called as scan-to-BIM process, where we documented the building in order to develop a BIM model. BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. So it's a parametric model of an asset or a building where the user has access to all the informations, all the relevant information that can be linked on any object. You will hear more about that probably in the next presentation. And through this representation, we tried to bring together like the plans for a new addition for the reuse of the building that was meant to be converted into a museum, folk art museum, and also to use the 3D representation of the building to run some energy simulation scenarios for its rehabilitation. And this allowed us to have access and to bring together information about all these aspects and disciplines that you saw already, regarding the spaces and the material properties of the building, as well as with the results of the energy simulation of different intervention scenarios for the building. And this whole process not only facilitated more the stakeholders and the owners of the building to better choose and understand the impact of the different choices in terms of the implementation, the scenario to be implemented, but also it allowed us to produce and generate hard data that could be used then in going to the energy companies to convince them that actually they could chip in, they could like provide the necessary loan for the renovation of the building. So actually bringing together the 3 different components of the equation for renovating the building, and of course these experiences were documented in guidelines and good practices that were published and shared with all the relevant stakeholders and authorities in all the countries of the project partners, as well as in tools that clearly supported the financial mechanism of the rehabilitation, the renovation for the reuse of the building. Moving on to a different scale now. So from the cultural heritage asset and the building into like a much larger study area, including the relevant context. It is, and this is how we operate in most of our projects in Star C. It is recognized today that the context of a cultural heritage asset, aspects like its urban fabric, the orientation of an example of built heritage, the environmental conditions in its locale, and all other relevant information could influence our insight and our understanding of an interpretation of the impact of either climate or any other kind of decay that we study on the building. And this is clearly documented in meta-studies and of the relevant literature of white papers and policies in cultural heritage, we see like a huge increase of publication of policies and white papers in what is called historic urban landscapes as compared to policies on cultural heritage assets or objects for conservation. So in this effort, if one looks at the available solutions that are out there, it is clear that in most cases we do have software solutions and platforms that focus on bringing together 3D data with GIS databases, or procedurally modeled representations of a city, or remote sensed through satellite imaging 3D reconstructions of large urban scale sites. And even more recently, efforts and initiatives that focus on knowledge extraction and data integration, such as the efforts of the Time Machine initiative. So it seems that there is like a lack of software solutions about the monitoring of historic neighborhoods in a way that would facilitate the planning of built heritage conservation. And even more so, there is a lack of understanding of standardized workflows for the production of what we call like quality open 3D data, as this is defined in the ex-ante impact assessment report that was the initiation of the ECHOS and the ECCC framework, specifically for historic city management. So trying to respond to this need and address this, we in this project, Urban Periscope, we moved beyond the visualization of the 3D visualization of historic cities, as you see here, of Nicosia, in order to address specific challenges. These challenges are interconnected, and basically we could like group them into 3 categories. The first group concerns challenges that are generated by urban sprawl that adds pressure to heritage and old neighborhoods, which is something that a phenomenon that acts against what we call the 15-minute city model that is promoted by the Driving Urbanization programming today by the European Commission. There is a loss in a heritage building by human neglect, climate change, and international real estate pressures, which of course impacts city and communities' resilience, which acts against the principles of the new European Bauhaus. And of course, we see that there is a lack of an acceleration of our responses in renovating our historic and heritage buildings, as it was like identified long ago by the relevant policy paper funded by the European Commission back in 2017, which would help us as a country to achieve the EU Green Deal goals. The second cluster of challenges regards, of course, like a condition that is more localized, I would say, regards the challenges that we are facing in what we call second and third tier cities of the European South. So there are like there is this group of cities in Central Europe that because of their access in resources, they develop different kinds of open cadastral systems, that so-called digital twins of the city centers that provide access to all this wealth of information and knowledge to all the various stakeholders and actors. But actually, this is not true for our part of the world here. And finally, the third group of challenges, if I could call them like this, regard like more technical aspects, like the scalability and sustainability of such kind of tools and software platforms that need to be user-enabling in everyday operations, as well as matters of user acceptance of these digital tools that include also, of course, concerns over data ownership, privacy, and security. So what we actually the way that we try to address all these challenges was by building this online platform that brings together 3D GIS data sets with HBIM representations of our building stock, and through which the user can get access to all the linked data of the analysis of a building. The platform is online, and you are welcome to explore it. So basically, through this 3D interface, the user can select the buildings that have been studied as pilot cases, and to gain access by clicking on them to the various types of data set and information. But in addition to that, to be able to access environmental information, and in particular, land surface temperature changes in the last 10 years. And this is something that can help like conservators better connect and causes and effects, and of course and I will come back to this in the next slides, also through different visualization modes and modalities, the user can access information about the material conditions of the building, as well as its environmental impact in more integrated ways, as well as in more like standardized solutions like typical classification tables, as well as, of course, online building information modeling viewers of the 3D representation. So what we learned through this process was that visualization and multimodal visualization plays a significant role in providing access to different discipline data and data of different scale. That having access to chronological change is key in like inferring new knowledge, as well as it does by providing access, bringing together different scales, bringing together data sets of different scales. And as I mentioned earlier, this is like key in any conservation activity for the conservators to better understand like how the environmental, the climate conditions might have influenced and impacted the structure of a building. And finally, of course, the semantic structure of metadata is necessary in order to be able, for us to be able to really bring together and support the interoperability of all these data sets with their metadata. And I will conclude with these slides. So all these efforts and knowledge that we have been developing, we are trying now, with the support of our working group in Daria, as well as in the context of the Atrium project, to level it up, to make this workflow, to describe this workflow in a more adaptable and abstract way that could be adopted and implemented by various communities in different sites and in different cities. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yorgos. And I would like now to invite our guest from France, starting with Elisabeth Venice from the Acta Vista NGO, to deliver her talk on reviving heritage, empowering lives, a journey of inclusion through built heritage restoration.
Distinguished guests, Your Excellence, my name is Elizabeth and I'm here today to represent Acta Vista. To begin with, I would like to thank the European Nostra organization, thanks to whom I came to Cyprus, as well as the French Institute, for the contribution and facilitation of this presentation, and of course, the Cyprus Institute for hosting me today. I would like to add that it's not often for small or medium-scaled non-profits to have the opportunity to present their project to such prestigious institutions and to build bridges between politics, research, and the civil society. So I'm here today to represent Acta Vista, a French non-profit organization based in Marseille, which operates since 2002 in order to bring built heritage back to life. We work with stonemasons, we work with carpenters, we work with metal workers to restore and to beautify all kinds of prestigious built heritage, military forts, churches, castles, throughout the region of Marseille especially, but also all around France. So far, nothing is very original about it. Yet, Acta Vista uses a methodology that is quite unique in France, probably in Europe, and maybe even around the world. How so? 100% of our realizations are made by men and women who are very far from opportunities, half of whom have never touched a tool before they arrived in Acta Vista. Today, throughout this presentation, I aim to depict, to my best abilities, explain and advocate for the reunion of two worlds that are often separated by a huge gap, the prestigious world of culture and the optimistic world of social work. How can they be reunited? How can we address social issues, all the while responding to cultural heritage and challenges? How can built heritage, restoration, be a powerful stepping stone for social empowerment? Heritage is a common good, a vector of identity, of social cohesion, but it's also an often underestimated economic driver. Across Europe, many monuments are deteriorating due to lack of resources, funds, even though they could actually generate jobs and boost local economies. Economically speaking, I don't think anyone here will actually contradict me if I say that culture and built heritage are often the poor relation of our societies, and often enough, built heritage is left to deteriorate, either because of economic issues or simply because old constructions do not always fit modern uses. Yet, built heritage is an important lever for tourism, employment, revitalization. Built heritage is that drilled pocket which always requires more money, but which can also connect people, generations, and culture. There is a French journalist that is called Jean-Claude Izot, who once said about Marseille, d'où que l'on vienne, on est chez soi à Marseille. No matter where we come from, in Marseille we are home. Before feeling French or European or Mediterranean, in Marseille you feel Marseillais, or more precisely, you feel supportive of the local football team, l'Olympique de Marseille. Marseille is a clever and famous mix of sun, sea, Mediterranean, Europe, France, a bit of everything, a city that is full of opportunities and that gives lasting impression to visitors, sometimes hate, sometimes love, it's always passionate. But the city also suffers from very big social challenges, in particular regarding poverty, unemployment, poor housing, and especially for the younger generation. Its unemployment rate is 30% higher than the national average. hitting the young people the hardest. Nearly 30% of 15 to 24 years olds are neither in employment nor in training, and in some neighborhoods, more than 50% of households live below the poverty line. At the same time, a quarter of France's 46,000 listed monuments require urgent restoration. This challenge, I think, is shared across the Mediterranean. So how can we turn this heritage crisis into a social opportunity? That brings us back to the arguments. How can built heritage restoration be a powerful stepping stone for social empowerment? Acta Vista builds its foundation upon the concept of pride, which I think is very French. Instead of assigning people with less opportunities with the tasks that are considered the most basic ones, Acta Vista's team has decided to entrust what holds most value in our societies, protected built heritage, in the hands of the people who have often been left behind. We built a project in which men and women from 18 to 77 years old can take part in a hands-on restoration and training program where they learn from scratch and live with a certification, traditional masonry, delivered by the French Ministry of Labor. It often embodies the first certificate, the first diploma obtained in life. Homelessness, access to healthcare, administrative problems, and to co-construct with them a professional project in order to reach for long-term employability opportunities. Today, 20 years after our creation, we have been working with city halls, with region councils, with counties in France to use the most beautiful buildings of our heritage as a lever for people with less opportunities to find their path in life. Le Fort Saint-Nicolas, that you can see here, also called La Citadelle de Marseille, is our headquarters, but also le Domaine National de Chambord, l'Abbaye de Saint-Sever-de-Rustan, in the past, l'Abbaye de Montmajour, l'Hôpital Caroline, Fort de Faisin, and so many others. Our project is built to be a convenient and flexible tool that can be both grabbed by a beneficiary needing a stepping stone to get back on tracks, but also by a local government, by an institution, which would like to make out of a restoration operation an opportunity for social inclusion, cultural valorization, and environmentally friendly restoration. At this point, one of the questions that is often asked is, how is it even possible that the Ministry of Culture would accept for unqualified people to carry out the restoration of protected built heritage? The answer is that just like a private company, every restoration Acta Vista carries out is done according to the rules of the art and thoroughly followed by the Ministry of Culture in region, the DRAC, as well as built heritage architects, an engineering office, who are the general contractors, as well as all the relevant actors of the built heritage world. The value of an associative approach such as ours can, of course, be translated into figures. We are a tool that is flexible enough to meet regional needs, be it in terms of construction deadlines, but also local traditional restoration techniques that are employed, and that tackles at the same time cultural, social, environmental, and pedagogical challenges. This tool is also tailor-built to the labor market shifts, insofar as our social workers are in touch with hiring companies daily to understand what sectors are hiring, to facilitate internships, immersion periods for the trainee. Yet, the biggest added value of our project are non-tangible, just like so many richness of the world. 50% of our trainees finish their training with us after 12 months, and then what do? Half of them actually stays in construction. Half of them end up working in a completely different sector, cooking, security, any kind of sector. Does it matter? Acta Vista is designed as a stepping stone for those who need it the most. It doesn't hire people that are passionate about built heritage. It hires people that need it and enables people to become passionate about it. Throughout our program, people learn how to connect, to care for the beautiful heritage that we work on, but also to follow guidelines, to respect their hierarchy, to be punctual. They learn to be part of a group and to have taken part in the restoration of centuries-old buildings that will last centuries more, thanks to their contribution and to their motivation. They learn that facing difficulties in life and sometimes needing professional support does not mean that their worth is inferior to others. They empower through pride and through respect. Our team, the permanent staff as we call it, is composed of project managers, stonecutters, masons, social workers, accountants, fundraisers, cultural mediators. Every single one of us gets up in the morning feeling pride in this project that we believe in so much. And even if it's tough to overcome hardships, such as the lack of funding, the hopelessness to do more, the political shifts, we are convinced of our values, impact, and relevance, and our key figures show that we are right to be so. Each year, we support 500 men and women in their access to work, and 2 out of 3 finish their 1-year-long program at Actavista with either a job or a training opportunity. 9 persons out of 10 who take the traditional masonry exam delivered by the Ministry of Labor pass it. Each year we welcome an increasing number of women in the program. We started maybe with 1 every 100 men in, let's say like 15 years ago, whereas today we have 1 woman per team of 10 people. 90% of the material, the training material that we use, are re-employed. Everything, water, lime, sand, mortar, obviously the tiles, the bricks, the rubble stones, the wooden elements. Year after year, we have been shaping our support to always fight back against the hurdles that we obviously met along the way. We started with Actavista in 2002, and we realized that we needed more structure in our pedagogy since we were targeting the most vulnerable people who are often disconnecting from social and work environments. To structure this pedagogy, we rapidly created a training organization that is called Bao Formation, that you can see on the shirt of the trainer. At first, we were mostly working with people either in prison or on parole up until the 2020s, where a shift began operating. And we started working more with refugees, not out of choice, but because they became the most vulnerable. We created on-site French classes because we couldn't find any. We chose teachers specialized in analphabetism and illettrism to fit the needs of the people that we accompany. In 2011, the fort became the property from the Ministry of Defense to the City Hall of Marseille. And in 2017, the City Hall started considering what to do about it, what to do with this fort, our headquarters. They decided to open a public market to manage the fort, and we decided there was no way for us to give up this place and to stop with its restoration through our Back to Work program. We wrote a cultural project aimed at the opening and exploitation to the public of the Fort Saint-Nicolas. We won. And we began with guided tours, gradually cultural events, artist residencies. There was actually a public consultation to begin with. This fort had always been closed to the public since its creation in 1660. So we asked the Marseillais, and for the anecdote, for the little story, the fort was built by the royal power to tame the Marseille people. So it's obviously very symbolic in France. And we wanted to ask the locals what they wanted to do about it, what they wanted to do with it, and how they saw the future of the Fort Saint-Nicolas. So we gradually started with cultural events, artist residencies. We wanted to do the biggest garden, shared garden of Europe, And then we studied the soils, and we decided not to do the biggest shared garden in Europe. It's a military fort, and it's also a place where the fireworks are fired every year, or twice a year. So it was not a really great idea. But we decided instead to start with a bioremediation project with Aix-Marseille University. We are working now with new colleagues from the cultural valorization world to reopen a fort that has always been close to the public and to bring it back to life with little resources and big ambitions, all the while always fighting not to lose our social essence by including our trainees in the artistic and cultural projects. We had, for instance, an artist in residence who was working towards the collection of the memory of the forts, and she worked with our trainees all throughout the project. Along the way, we met with several organisms, institutions, private partners, helping us go one step further in terms of credibility and development along the way. Europa Nostra, obviously, in 2023. Betancourt-Schuller, more recently, who valorized our intelligence in the hands. And I know that in Cyprus, craftsmanship is very important, so I think that you understand what it means to us. Today, we have been open to the public for a bit less than a year. And since the 4th of May, we have welcomed over 200,000 visitors on site. We've had events with nearly 50,000 attendees, 5,000 visitors and participants in public workshops, 17 events hosted in partnership with local stakeholders, 3 artistic projects from our residencies presented to the public on a permanent basis, and we have 3 more since the beginning of 2025. And more importantly for Actavista, we helped Mehdi, a 50-year-old Marseillais who had always been a chef in a very prestigious restaurant until COVID, where he lost all his investments at the same time as his self-confidence. And he found his smile back after a year. He actually said that he never thought that he would last a year, but he did. We helped Jennifer, a 30-year-old woman who was already qualified in construction, but had always felt undermined in a very masculine world and was struggling with her self-esteem until she bloomed among one of our teams. We helped Omar, who had never touched a tool in his life before in Afghanistan, and sent her a year ago a picture of him, 3 years later, with Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron, on the restoration site of Notre-Dame de Paris. I hope that my presentation today will encourage you to consider helping building bridges between the world of heritage and the empowerment of people with less opportunities. I hope to have successfully conveyed the importance of fostering relationships between our cultures, our heritage, our people, and giving opportunities to people not only through passive assistance, but through the common and universal feeling of achieving something great, something meaningful, something full of pride, which will take us further on our own path. If heritage really does belong to everyone, is it not our duty to use its restoration to rebuild lives, to create opportunities with and for the past, the current, and the future generations? And to conclude, I would only add that heritage might be at risk, but it's also a key opportunity to shaping richness in all senses of the term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. So I would like now to invite Anaïs Guyane and Violetta Bergel from CNRS to present their talk on building collective human and artificial intelligence for conservation and cultural heritage research at the Notre-Dame de Paris Cathedral. Let me close this.
It's not the first slide. No, it's not. It's not the first.
Good. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting us and for this event. We are very happy to be with you tonight. My name is Anaïs Guillem.
My name is Violetta Bergel.
And we are going to talk a bit more about Notre Dame and the experience that we have with the project and the research. Just a few words, so please bear with us because after us is some refreshments, so please, we will try to be swift and efficient. I am Anaïs Guillem, I'm architect and archaeologist and working as a knowledge engineer.
And I'm Violetta Bergel, I'm a researcher at the CNRS in 2 labs. Sorry, and I'm small, yeah. Okay. We work mainly in the MAP laboratory, which is a laboratory based in Marseille, working on models and simulation for architecture and heritage. 2 words about our laboratory. So as I said, is based in Marseille, and in the last maybe 20 years, we worked about many issues concerning the preservation, conservation, management of cultural heritage, but always through digital tools and methods, trying to find innovative ways to contribute to this field.
So that's what we are so happy to be here, because we have a very overlapping activities and scientific interest with the team of the Cyprus Institute and many people around. So today we are going to go through 4 parts, maybe a bit faster in some of them, mostly about what it is to manage digital data, enrich digital data, what it is to understand digital data, and exploring. So we'll go through the example of Notre Dame de Paris. Of course, the unexpected happened in 2019, and since then, the Digital Data Working Group gathered. We are part of the Digital Data Working Group that is itself part of the scientific research of Notre Dame de Paris that is working alongside the restoration activities. So there are 2 main groups.
The first thing is that when the unexpected happened, it reminded us how much heritage can be considered always at risk, because I don't know how it was perceived in the world, but in France, nobody thought 1 second that Notre Dame de Paris could burn one day. So it was like a wake-up for everybody. So after the fire, obviously there were many involvement on all the communities, and in particular coming from scientific communities, because we always wanted to contribute to the restoration of this emblematic monument. So very quickly after the fire, the CNRS and the Ministry of Culture built this chantier scientifique, which is, I think, scientific action for Notre Dame de Paris restoration, and which evolved in parallel of the worksite for the restoration. I think we can say that it grouped around 2,000 researchers from 200 researchers coming from very different communities, be it architects, archaeologists, historians, but also physicists, biologists, and so on, so much. And they work in 9 thematic groups.
So those questions, we listed a couple of questions that this catastrophe gave us access to a monument that has been very little studied at the end. And that's why a lot of people were very upset about the catastrophe. But in the same time, a lot of people, scientific experts, wanted to gather to try to help to know more about Notre-Dame de Paris, about the past, the previous states of Notre-Dame de Paris, previous restorations, modifications, as well as the present, so the catastrophe and what would become the restoration project and the future. So all these projects about climate change, life cycle for buildings, about documentation, all of that was very much in our minds. So among the questions were how to gather knowledge, extract information about materials, different types of materials, as well as all the geometric and structural information. And also a group gathered about the emotions, the heritage emotion that the catastrophe produced in society and people.
And finally, we can say also that as dramatic as it was, this worksite could be considered as a kind of privileged moment for observation and study, because it brings to researcher a very unique opportunity to study all the cathedral in all its dimensions and to access to materials and technical details that weren't accessible in the past, and also in an amazing opportunity to work with many disciplines in a very hard dialectic in architecture, dialectic allowing to work on past, present, and future, and simultaneously.
So very quickly, those working groups solidified, and they got organized by thematic. So we have the wood, metal, stone, stained glass, decorative elements, structure, acoustic, emotions, and digital data. And today we are mostly talking about the work that we did with the digital data working group together. Just a few information that you already heard about that. So there was this emergency of the work sites, safety measures, and then restoration that was between 2019 and 2024. So since the reopening of the cathedral, you all know that. And the research time is still continuing, but it was very much aligned and associated with the restoration activities. So the digital data, was one of the stakes because we needed data to be able to work on restoration, digital decision making, and research all together. But imagine already 200 researchers plus all the team for the restoration. So for the managing the data, that has been a challenge, to say the least.
An interesting thing is that, of course, it's a worksite, an unprecedented worksite, and obviously in an uncommon worksite, we have to imagine uncommon methods and tools to bring new knowledge and to maybe bridge the gaps existing between our past knowledge and the needs for the restoration. So I think the collapsed vaults are a good example of this need to imagine new tools, because obviously you can see that this configuration didn't allow to use our traditional methods like drones acquisition or laser-grammetric acquisition or things like that to produce 3D as we always do. So we had to imagine other ways to produce data. So here you can see custom methods designed specifically for the work site, because you can see that there were very, very little space between the collapsed vaults and the, around between 30 centimeters to 80 centimeters. So obviously laser scanning doesn't work and drones neither. So we have to imagine new ways. So it's kind of a cable cam, cameras positioned on translating dispositives, allowing to take pictures of the vaults with a big overlap to allow the reconstruction, the digital reconstruction of the vaults. And you can see here a result of an acquisition performed with this mount. So it was a work made by a colleague, Renato Saleri, with the help of Kevin Jacot at the very beginning of the cleaning of the vault.
So, for example, what you see here are the remains that are burned from the roof structure, and you will see later on a reconstruction of these elements. Here. So in this slide, you can see on the right different layers of the reconstruction about the wood structure, the roof structure, and on the left, the documentation and the alignment with like surveying, architectural surveys from conservation architects, and elements from how the modeling happened for the reconstruction.
That we don't see here is that to perform this reconstruction hypothesis, in fact, our colleagues, used many data sources. In fact, for this work, Kevin mainly used the drawings from Rémi Fromont and Cédric Tranceau, made a few years ago, but also several thousand, this time it's really thousands, of images and pictures of the roof structure. But even if the monument had been scanned in 3D by the past, unfortunately, we had not this information about the roof structure. So he had to aggregate many sources and make them converge through this modelization. But obviously, it raises many structuration and aggregation issues or challenges more than issues.
What you can see here is like what we try to show you is like the multitemporal data. On the right, you have the different surveys with the remains on the vaults and at different moments, at 4 different moments, and on the left, the reconstruction. What is difficult then is to be able to track different changes and what we call integrate the data together.
And obviously, there are so much things to study in Notre Dame, so there are also so much documentary sources to collect. And the very first step for the data working group was to imagine a way of collecting data, and we very quickly see that these data were highly heterogeneous. Heterogeneous because of the very different natures of the files that we were able to collect, but also heterogeneous in terms of object of interest, of scale, of temporality, or of standards, and so on.
We always joke a bit, but because we are joking about ourselves first, is that we all would need data to be perfectly organized. But as we all know, we are not even able to do it for ourselves sometimes. And what we try to do working with the different working groups is to go from homemade solutions to more and more structured and more documented workflows and solutions to be able to make sense from this heterogeneity of data. If data were Legos, we would need to sort our data sets, but also to arrange them, to visually present them, to know what we have in our computers, machine servers, and what the end goal is obviously to have a very interesting stories to talk about and to be able to preserve it for the next centuries. For that, we work together to organize what we call a digital ecosystem that is different tools, but also people to help to be able to manage, visualize, annotate, document in so many ways all types of data.
We often talk about a digital model or digital twin. So, of course, it's a bit complex to know what we currently are proposing. But in our mind, the main idea was to not only address data issues, but to be able to link actors to their data, to their knowledge, activities, material objects, and so on. So we prefer the term of digital ecosystem, but maybe it can be discussed further.
Yeah, it's a big discussion. So let's go to enriching these data sets. So one of the tools is called OpenTeso. It's an open source tool that recently has been used by the Ministry of Culture, but it's developed by a colleague of ours that is called Milad Rousset at the MOM, the Maison de la Méditerranée. And it's a tool to manage concepts and thesaurus. So you see on the left the hierarchy of the terms, on the right the documentation for one term, and it's organized through in a thesaurus. You can export it in many different formats, linked open format like RDF and so on. We don't want to bother you with a lot of details, but it's what's allowed us to document the controlled vocabulary. So controlled vocabularies is all the words that we are using, and we need to define them, because when I'm talking to a structure engineer, sometimes a vault, we don't really understand the same thing. And that's where, for the indexing of data and what we want to do, that opening and linking data, we need first to be at least to agree on the different words that we are using and to define them at least.
When someone in heritage sciences talk about the sun, in French it's le soleil, he can either speak about the sun itself, but also about the French synchrotron facility. But as humans, with contextual information, we are trained to understand what is in fact talking about. But for machine, it's absolutely not trivial. So we have to develop methods to bridge this gap and to let machines understand the context of the vocabulary we employ, to understand the meaning of the question we would like to ask to our machines.
So at the end, it looks like hierarchies of concepts that are documented that you can reuse and use as a human to index your own data sets, but also from different services and servers. The one that you are seeing at the screen is like the typology of analysis for heritage science, spectrometry and diffraction and ablation laser, all of that.
I think we will pass quickly on this slide, but there is another tool allowing to document the collected data, because of course when it comes to use data, we have to know what is inside, how it was produced to understand how we can reuse it reasonably. But collecting data is one thing, but what we want to collect, in fact, is not so much data, but knowledge about Notre Dame. And to do that, we also build this tool implemented into the ecosystem, which is called aioli, as a reference of famous food in Marseille. And it's a tool dedicated to collaborative documentation of cultural heritage objects. So basically, the idea is that everybody can annotate pictures and describe what they are currently seeing, so we can cross the view between actors. And to do that, it's all a complex system I won't detail, but what is interesting here is that all the annotation are reprojected automatically in the 3D space. So all the collected observation of all the discipline finally can converge into the very same representation space. What you are seeing here is a first application of this tool for Notre Dame restoration. Many annotations had been made using the
condition report,
made by the architects in charge of the restoration. But we have also collected many annotations from the observations from all the members of the working groups, maybe around 15,000 annotations. So it's huge, and you can see here some of these annotations specialized in 3D. Another example with some annotation concerning the condition report of the vaults, of the intrados of the vaults, and another example with the choir, the chapels from the choir. And all the observation can be really freely described by users, so they can join comments or any information they want, and also additional material like images, videos, pictures, reports, and so on.
So the step forward is to go through, once we enrich these data sets, how can we understand or visualize them differently or better? Because with more than almost 200,000 pictures, 5,000 point clouds, you imagine we are clearly in a massive data sets, massive data. And for that, we need to be able to filter, to cross, to reduce the complexity.
It's the reason why we tried to find other ways to browse data, and particularly to visualize some specialized data. So what you are seeing here is a 3D web viewer developed for the ecosystem, allowing to superimpose different kind of our data, be it before fire or after fire data.
So the viewer has been developed by Violette. So she's very shy about it, but she shouldn't. What you see here is that you have the 2010 point cloud that is in gray, and you have the 4 voussoirs that are the 4 location that is a result of a long exploration of data to try to understand where they fell, and we wanted to see the result, but that was the beginning of a new experiment, because those voussoirs and this result, we don't really understand where it comes from. We don't really have information about the context of this information, and that's where, for reconstruction studies, it's really important. And that's why looking at it through the 3D viewer helps us to go forward with this inquiry.
It's another example of a use of the viewer allowing to superimpose different temporal states of the very same space. So here in background you can see laser grammetric acquisition of the cathedral made between 2006 and 2012 by Andrew Talon. And also you can see the reconstruction of the roof structure made by Kevin Jacot, and behind you can see the remains of the vaults collapsed on the extrados after the fire. So we can start to bring together different states and try to compare them to try to extract new knowledge about the cathedral to help the reconstruction, obviously.
It went faster than I expected.
Much faster.
Yes.
Maybe.
One before?
Hmm?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
One very important thing was to talk much with all the members of the various working group, because we absolutely had to understand what were their needs to try to identify the way where visualization could help to understand better how the cathedral was built. So here it's an example of a collaboration with the metal working group, where we try to specialize their analysis samples and to propose new ways of filtering the information. For example, here we specialized several analysis samples, and we implement a function allowing to display only the samples whose lead content was higher than a threshold, maybe to understand where the lead contamination was higher or things like that.
So on the left, this is the composition of the samples. And that's how we started to look into how to filter and how to have very flexible tools, both in terms of enriching data, but also structuring and filtering, visualizing data through different facets, what we could call also dimensions, but could be also facets. And we wanted to look at more spatial aspect or semantic aspect or temporal aspect, provenance, and so on. And that was to be able to work with the different research questions of all the researchers working with us. So one example is the transverse arch of Notre Dame that collapsed in the nave. That's called the F2930, and there are here the example of, on the left, the two pictures, the reconstruction on site, an attempt, the first attempt of reconstruction on the left, and on the right, the same data, but digitally represented. And we worked to go as close as possible and to be able to do maybe the same thing, sometimes different things, to be able to carry on the discussion and the questioning. So,
of course, working directly with some material object really helps to understand many things. But in that case, we couldn't imagine pursue this experiment always on site, because the work site was really inaccessible, and also the voussoirs were not located in the same place, so it was a big problem, and also the lead contamination was an issue. So from the visualization point of view, the idea was not to replace reality with virtual environment, but really to try to reconcile the two environments and to complete them. So here, obviously, it's easier to move a virtual object than a physical one. even if we maybe lose some information. So maybe the better was to imagine this way to enable back and forth from the site to the laboratory and vice versa.
So the very beginning, the reconstruction study was happened because the conservation architects wanted to maybe reuse some of the stones in the future restoration project. But very, very quickly, especially with the anastylosis attempt, basically only 4 stones were replaced. So it was not really useful for the restoration project. But for the researchers, that was a very interesting experiment, and they wanted to go way further than that and to carry on this work. So we carried on digitally and in the scientific group. The reconstruction is a reasoning about mostly time, but it's a time that it becomes an hypothesis, because we cannot go back to T1. T1 is lost forever, it's in the past, and we can at best produce some kind of hypothesis about it. And that's where the multitemporal data become what? Why it's?
I don't know. Maybe next one? Okay.
Yes. So the reconstruction hypothesis, we like to have certainty, and we want to know what are the criteria that we used. And some of the criteria we worked with the archaeologists, and we can more or less explain them as the keystone positioning, the features that are the notches, the fall location of the voussoir, the width of the voussoir, the series with the facies of the stone, and the lapidary cross marks on the joint sides. So it's a neat image and a neat schema, but what this schema doesn't show is that all these predicates, they are only part of an argumentative process that is very complicated, that changes over time about the same data set. And one example is that initially, you are looking at the remaining stone of the arch, and you see the cross mark that is facing upward. But initially, in the reconstruction, we put the joint side with the lapidary mark downwards. So when one of the workers sent us this picture, we immediately reversed all the voussoirs, obviously. But that's how this reconstruction argumentation is always an open path. And that's what we want to try to manage in the digital continuum.
So maybe it's all about visualizing what is behind the data. So in this case, it was just a tool allowing to, in fact, embed all the archaeological observation made on the voussoir inside the data, so that we can perform some query directly from the visualization environment. So here in this example, we let user filter data to highlight data respecting some criteria. So in that case, the shape of the cross lapidary mark.
And one more.
Okay.
So one of the last experiments that we did was to be able to extrapolate sort of hypothesis trajectory. So here what you are looking at is that you have the different slots in green, the voussoir that is in gray, but the red represent the 3D trajectory through the different hypotheses. So it's a trajectory that never existed. But for us, it's very useful because we see that this voussoir was replaced all over the place. It's not a voussoir that was replaced, and we are very confident about it. So this kind of visualization, even of something that was never represented, could be useful to go further and to look at if there are some archaeological elements that would help us to assess this voussoir especially.
And basically, I think that this example shows how much we try to not only use the digital ecosystem to, as a memory of the monument, but also as a memory of the ways the monument has been studied all along the restoration process. So we really try hard to help data speak about their story and about the way researchers were involved and reason about the cathedral.
So, because it's before going for some refreshments, we want to tell you that digital data is like a chocolate cake. We have a lot of different elements, but we don't want to eat them separately, and we prefer it baked, right? It's baked. It's much better. And it's exactly the same with data. So that's why we want to go further in this exploration. For us, data is like the new gold. Like we talked a lot about materiality, but for us, in this document, that is just a PDF, there is a lot of value. There is a lot of knowledge. This is just the nomenclature from the conservation architects. But how can we show the value of this knowledge? Well, one possibility is to digitize it, to structure it, for example, in a thesaurus. It creates a special typology. Another possibility to go beyond that is to assess the topological relation, so saying that the Travée 21 is overlapping with the Chapel 21, for example, or is included in more, sorry. And what can we do with that? Well, it's it makes possible to index all the data from their location point of view, all heterogeneous elements from spaces, places, building elements, and spatial primitives, for example. And all of that can be expressed topologically.
Maybe it seems a bit theoretical, but in fact, it's the idea that it's a process that helps to allow a computer to understand that when a user is interested in the Travée 27, in fact, is also specifically interested in the Chapel 27 or in specific shapes between this space. So we have absolutely to characterize this kind of relationships to be able to give access to users to what they are looking for. But it's even harder to give access to users to what they don't know they are looking for. Okay, and it's the reason why we try to apply the very same methods to many aspects of the collected data to characterize their relationship, be it semantically, temporally, spatially, geometrically, and so on. Okay, and these two images represent, in fact, the very same data. These two images represent the condition reports made by the architects and transformed in specialized annotation. And on the left, the representation focuses more on geometry and spatiality. So it helps to understand maybe more the materiality of the cathedral or the hierarchy between the spaces and things like that. But on the right representation, all the red nodes you can see are observations made by members of the scientific action or of the work site, and in green, thesaurus terms. So this representation helps more to understand the semantic relationships between observation, phenomenon observed on the site or on the data, and the words that were used to qualify it. So we can try to look for maybe cluster or patterns helping to see differently Notre Dame.
So even if the restoration project is done, for us the research carries on, and especially through the data. And the work we do, like the restoration project, we aim for decades and centuries. And that's why we really advocate for documentation and inventories, metadata, even if it hurts your ears. But the reality, it's what makes this knowledge last years, at least.
And we can say that the more we document all we are producing, be it in terms of data or knowledge, the more we can build meaningful corpuses to be studied in decades. So we have to pursue this effort, and we really think that even if the restoration is finished or to be finished soon, and even if Notre Dame reopened a few months ago, the research questions that were opened by after the fire are still to be studied. So, okay, the restoration work site is over, but the research just started.
And thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Violette and Anais. So I suggest we continue the discussion outside here, animated also by some very good French wine. So, thank you very much.